and welcome to Real Actors, Real Answers, the video podcast where you are the star. I have the privilege and honor of introducing you to Dave Konig. He is an actor. He is a comedian. He is an entertainer. He has a lot of wonderful things. He has wonderful energy, and if I do say so, he's very funny.
Well, thank you.
Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, my friend. How's by you in David Thompson land?
See, what did I tell you? Yeah, it's going well. A little challenging, but that's called life. You know, if life's not challenging, then what is it? Boring.
You should embroider that and put that on a pillow.
It's a good idea. On a pillow. So tell me, how did all this life that you live and are living, how did it start? But don't start when you were first born.
How did life start? David, did you miss that class in junior high school? I mean,
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's narrow that down just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Dave, this is your life.
Right.
So how did it all start for you in this career?
In show business.
Yes.
I was a child. I was an obnoxious young child actor when I was about 9 years old. My mother was a frustrated actress, and she shoved me out on stage, but I went willingly. So in this analogy, if we're using Gypsy as the analogy, as the metaphor, she was Mama Rose, but I was more Baby June than Louise.
That's funny. Okay. That's very picturesque. How did you realize that you could entertain people and that you're funny? Who first thought you were funny?
Well, I mean, I thought I was funny, and so did other people around me. But I started as a child actor in theater in New York City. This is the early 1970s. There was a really vibrant theater scene in New York. Imagine the amount of theater in New York now and multiply that by 5. You know, that there was just theater companies everywhere. It was an entirely different city, a different world, different economics. And so I started acting there was a lot of experimental theater in New York at the time. So I think my very first acting job was at a production at the Ridiculous Theater Company, which was this sort of very well-known experimental theater downtown. And so anyway, I started acting as a child and did a lot of plays in New York. And so that's how I started getting my chops in front of an audience at a very early age, which is, I think, I don't know how I imagine people get into show business now through Zoom, which I hate, by the way. Nothing personal. I don't blame you for Zoom. I don't blame you personally for Zoom, David. But
please no.
But the actors, I think nowadays, quite a lot. I've encountered a lot of young actors who, I don't know. I guess they get their start on YouTube or something. But I mean, the only way that I know of that you can really learn how to act is in front of an audience, and as often as possible. So that's what I started doing when I was very young, and I continue, and I'm stuck with it to this day. So I don't know how to do anything else, really.
What was your first play?
Well, the very first play I think was at the Ridiculous Theater Company. Was a play with a terrible title. It was called "They Danced While They Burned." Just an awful title, and it was a farcical, surreal cabaret / play about the Holocaust. So it was early 70s. It didn't predate. It didn't predate cabaret, but it was right around that time, and it was a very unusual project at the time. And I think it closed before opening night. I think it closed in rehearsals. So that one never got off the ground, but I was in it. And then I was in a lot of plays. I was in a play called The Night Thoreau Spent in Jail, where I played I played Ralph Waldo Emerson's son, and I fell down a flight of stairs, actually in performance, because the theater was down in Soho, and the off stage was downstairs from the stage. So there was a flight of stairs literally on the stage, and you would exit, you would go down the stairs, and I went down the stairs and I slipped and I slid down these stairs and literally crashed into a mirror or a glass window, as I recall, that was like leaning against the post there, and smashed the thing in the smithereens. My mother was in the audience. Everyone heard this because it was quite loud and quite violent, and she, oh my God, my baby, and she had to be restrained from running down the onto the stage and running down the stairs to rescue me. And oddly enough, the last scene of the play was a fantasy sequence where Henry David Thoreau is in jail, and all the people in his life are parading around him, and he sees all the characters in his life, and it's supposed to be like a slow, sort of spooky parade. And I had a toy drum. So, and I was injured. So I was limping. So I wrapped a bandana around my head, and I looked like Spirit of 76,
Yeah. Wow.
And it got some laughs because everyone knew, oh, this is the kid who just fell down the stairs. And apparently he survived, and he's doing some kind of a bit. So things like that. There's a lot of broken glass in my theatrical career. There was another play I did as a child at a theater company in New York called the Cubiculo Theater, and it was a theater company that was around for decades. It was had a reputation for doing good experimental work, and I was in an original play that was running there, and you know who was in that play was an actor named Mark Margolis. He just passed away recently. He went on to be the gangster in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, who had the stroke, and he's in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
With the bell, that guy. So he was a young actor. This is about 50 years ago. And we were in this play together. And this was another play where it was a typical kind of comedy of the time. It was about a guy who lived in New York and everything was going wrong, sort of a Prisoner of Second Avenue vibe. And I played the gypsy boy who lived upstairs, and the guy was, the guy lost his job, his girlfriend left, he was having all these problems. And just to add insult to injury, I was this gypsy boy, and I would sneak into his apartment and I would steal all his empty Coke bottles for the deposits. And the climax of this play is everything's gone wrong in this guy's life. He's in a mess. But the climax of the play is he comes home one day to his apartment. He opens the door and he catches the boy, that's me, who's been stealing all his Coke bottles. And he grabs my arm and I got you. And he was this one little moment of triumph in this play of his despair. And on opening night, he grabbed my arm wrong, and I had all these Coke bottles, and they all went crashing to the ground, and they smashed all over this. There was broken glass all over the stage. And the actor, it wasn't Mark Margolis, the actor who played the guy who grabbed me, froze because, this was not what was supposed to happen. And this was the last moment of the play. And so there's all this broken glass. I did not have a line in the final scene.
Okay.
But I ad-libbed. I said, I just looked at the glass and I said, well, now look what you did. I said, are you going to just stand there? You're going to help me clean this up? And the lights fade. Everybody thought it was a pretty funny way to end the play, and it got massive applause. And so it was an improvement on the actual play itself.
I love those stories.
I got one more. It's a broken glass trilogy. So the one more. Now we cut to about 30 years later. I'm playing Vince Fontaine in the Broadway revival of Grease, right? And in the 90s Broadway revival, Vince Fontaine, they had sort of padded the character out. And I was the character who broke the fourth wall. And I would come out in between scenes and do business with the crowd and cover scene change. And I actually warmed up the crowd before the show. And so I was doing stand-up on Broadway every night before the show. And the penultimate scene was a picnic. All the kids are out there. And Kenickie finds out that, I forget the plot of that stupid show, but Kenickie finds out that Rizzo's not pregnant, or she is pregnant, or something like that. Oh no, he finds that she's pregnant, and then he slams a Coke bottle down because it's a picnic, and storms off the stage. And then the next scene is the end of the play, where the end of the musical, where Zuko is crawling on his belly singing to Sandy, and they kind of mimicked the scene from the movie, and they had him crawling on his belly, whatever the hell he sang. You're the one that I want, or whatever. And then Kenickie finds out that Rizzo's not pregnant, and it's a happy ending. So anyway, and they made billions of dollars with that, right? So anyway, the actor who playing Kenickie slammed the bottle down, smashed glass all over the stage. And the next scene, Zuko's supposed to be crawling around on stage. So there's a Broadway house. There's 1,200 people there. There's smashed glass all over the stage. I was at the time the oldest member of the cast. I was like 30, and the rest were all 10 years younger than me. And no one knew what to do. Everyone kind of, they were off. Oh my God! And the orchestra is vamping. Boom, 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 boom. They're stalling for time because no one knows what the hell to do because they can't do the last scene because there's broken glass all over the stage. So I told one of the kids in the cast, I said, I was actually Hunter Foster, who went on to become a very big Broadway actor and director, but he was very young at the time, very talented. And I said, get me a broom and a shovel. And he went and he grabbed me a broom and a shovel because we were back in the wings. And I just walked out on stage with the broom and I yelled up to the booth. I said, give me a light. And I was off mic, so I had to project, which I could do. I said, give me a light. And they finally caught on. They gave me a spotlight and I was sweeping up the glass and I was talking to the audience. And is there a lawyer in the house? And just cracking, and I saved the day, So broken glass is a running. If you cast me in your play, guaranteed there's going to be smashed glass all over the stage at some point, whether you like it or not.
I love this trilogy that you shared with us. And the fact I could jump back a few feet here with you, what you said about theater. It's live. You have to be in front of an audience.
Yeah.
I grew up with theater. I was in, I don't know how many plays, and I still do them once in a while.
Right.
And that's the real test. You're not up there, and nothing against film. I love film too, okay? But there's something about being in the audience. You can't, okay, retake, back to one.
Right.
There is none, okay?
No
you
back
have
to one.
You have to improvise. One time I skipped an entire scene and they picked it up.
It happened. Yeah.
They go, thanks for letting us get home early. I go, what? But you epitomize. I'm gonna give this to you. You epitomize acting because
wow.
It's totally
acting. We're all in trouble. But go ahead.
It's totally imperfect, and that's the beauty of it. There is no room for ego. You trip over your own ego all the time. Like a pair of shoelaces. Theater tests you. During rehearsal. And throughout the whole thing, and then opening night and Sunday afternoons where you still have to have the energy, and things like that. No, that's wonderful.
You get, and I don't know how people learn how to act without doing theater, without being in front of an audience. You've got to you can act in acting classes, and that's fine, and that's great, and you're going to learn. I've learned a lot from some very wonderful acting. I studied for years with Austin Pendleton down at HB, and he's brilliant, and he taught me so much. But you've got to get in front of an audience, and that's that's the thing with stand-up comedy, obviously, is you're in front of an audience and you're constantly, you're firing on 1,000 cylinders all at once every moment because you're registering you're registering them, you're registering the joke, you're registering the laugh, and if something happens, which inevitably it always does, you have to handle that, you have to respond to that, and it's the old cliche of if you're in a nightclub, if you're in a comedy club or something, and the waitress drops a tray of glasses, if you don't acknowledge that, it makes the audience very tense.
Oh, it does.
Because something just happened, and the guy on stage who's in charge, you're in charge, you're pretending it didn't happen, but we all know it happened. So as a comic, when things like, you don't even have to come up with the most brilliant ad lib as long as you acknowledge it. So the waitress drops the tray of glasses and you just say, put that anywhere, which is not a great line, but it's just something to acknowledge. And then that relieves the tension and the audience is with you,
How important, I got to touch on this, my students.
By the way, the waitress with the cocktail with the glasses smashing, keeping within the theme of the broken glass, but go ahead.
Oh, I got you. No, 100% I got you. That's why I went like that. Yeah, exactly. one time I dropped a tray. I was in Annie, okay, and I dropped it. Wasn't supposed to. So immediately I picked it up and I went like this to the audience, because you've got to cover your bases.
Yeah,
Otherwise, everything just tumbles down
like something that's tumbling down. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Boom, bow. Okay, yeah. Tell me something. When did your theater? I respect that, and I love it. When did you discover, I'm going to do stand up?
Well, so I was a child actor, mostly in theater. I had a little TV, little film stuff going on, but nothing major, mostly theater. Then when I hit about 15, I went through that awkward, I shot up a foot, and I didn't shoot my foot. I mean, I grew.
Yes.
And I I became a gangly, awkward teenager. And plus I was just getting burnt out. So I left theater. I left show business. I was having also just like really awkward experience. I remember being sent up for an audition for the Broadway production of Shenandoah. Remember Shenandoah? And there's a boy character in it. And, my manager, I guess, just hadn't seen me in a while. And I show up for the audition and I'm literally, I'm a foot taller than every other kid there. And it was just things like that started happening, So I went through the awkward teenage years. I left show business, became a starving artist type. And then when I was about 20-ish, 21 or 22, something like that, I needed to get back in front of an audience. And I did not have the patience to get cast in a play and wait and go through rehearsals and all of that. I needed to get in front of an audience with some immediacy. And I knew I was a funny guy, and humbly I say that. And so I started gravitating towards stand-up comedy. And here's what happened. I started hanging out at the Comic Strip, which is a club in New York City, uptown. Mm-hmm. This is, let's say, mid-'80s. I'm a little fuzzy with dates. And so I'm hanging out there every night, and I'm not talking to anyone. I'm very, in my head, but I'm sitting in the back and I'm watching all the comics night after night after night. This is going on for weeks. And the MC, one of the regular MCs there, was a guy named Mike Sweeney. Very funny guy. Mike actually later on went on to become Conan O'Brien's head writer for like 30 years. But Mike is the MC at the club. And he takes a lot, he sees me there. So he strikes up a conversation with me. And I'm hanging out there every night. And there was one comic who went up almost every night. He was a regular there. And he would kind of bomb almost every night. But I was in hysterics. I loved everything this guy did. So I'm cracking up at everything. No one else is getting his material at all. But he would walk off the stage after literally bombing because people just didn't get his jokes. And he had such confidence. It was very attractive. It was very compelling. Like, clearly this did not bother him at all. And it wasn't arrogance. It was just, you could tell this kid, because he was younger than me, exuded this self-confidence that I felt very compelling. And also I really liked his jokes, which were very strange. And so after watching him every night for a couple of weeks, I got up the courage to go, because I was very in my own head. I was very, I didn't know how to behave in public. And I went up to him and I said, I really like your stuff. And he says, "Are you a comic?" And he obviously had spotted me there because I was hanging out there all the time. He says, "Are you a comic?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it, but I don't really know." He says, "I think you should be." He says, "You got a good look. You got a good sound. You seem like a funny guy. You should get up and do some time. I'll talk to Mike and we'll put you up." Like he ran the joint, which he didn't, but he had that confidence. And I kind of put him off. I went, "No, I'm not ready because I gotta." So this goes on for a few nights, and finally he says, and he's a little guy, and he's looking up at me, and he's younger than me, and he says, "Konig, if you don't get up on that stage, I'm not going to let you hang out here anymore." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll show you some jokes I wrote and see what you think." He said, "Okay." So I go back the next day and I had like 2 pages of like typewritten, this is pre-computer, 2 typewritten jokes. And he sits down in the bar outside of the showcase and he looks at my jokes and goes, "Okay, yeah. He says, "Okay." He says, "Wait 1 second." He goes into the showroom. He whispers something to Mike. He comes back out to the bar. He grabs me and he shoves me into the showroom. And just as I stumble in, Mike is introducing me from the stage. And he says, and now here he is, a real comedy rebel, Dave Konig. And I have no choice. I have to get up on stage and do my 4 minutes or whatever I had, and which I had prepared. And I had the unfortunate experience of I did really well my first time doing stand-up. It went over big, which means from that moment on, I was hooked, and I've been chasing that feeling ever since, you know. And the kid, that kid was Adam Sandler. So Adam Sandler shoved me on stage the first night I did stand-up comedy, and then I've never seen him since. That was Adam's last night at the comic strip. He had kind of graduated from that scene, and he'd already appeared on TV a couple of times, and so he was moving up and out. But he shoved me on stage the first time I ever did stand up. So God bless him. He's a good guy.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have time to even be nervous? Because that takes, you know.
I had, like, prior to that, like 22 years to be nervous, but I was very lucky, I think, that it honestly happened the way I just described it. And with Adam shoving me into the room, and just as Mike was bringing me on stage, it happened in a split second, I had no time to think at all. I think if I had time to think, I would have been very, very nervous, you know. But I had no time to think. I just had to jump up on stage. There was a light on my face, and I had to start telling jokes fast, you know, which I did. So
did they film back then? Did they, or is it just?
I mean, God, wouldn't that be something? Oh my Lord,
that would be amazing.
I never thought. No, they didn't film back then. It's probably for the best, you know, because I might have aged a bit since then. But yeah, that would be something to see that, huh? But you know what? It's the tape of your act is never as good as you remember.
No, and why is that?
I don't know. I think it's because stand-up comedy is such an immediate thing for you and for the audience, and you just have to be in that moment. And any tape film of it, which, yeah, you can get great film, obviously, and you know, you can hear the audience and you can hear the laughter, but it's just one step removed from the actual experience, and there's so much nervous energy involved with that actual experience. So when you watch a tape of your act, it's never as good as you remember it being. You go, I killed, and then you watch it, and go, what the hell happened? What'd you forget? You forget to plug in the microphone or something?
You don't know, and it's one. I think it's one of the healthiest things that you don't have to know. Which brings me to the next question, though. One of my students is a stand-up, and he, when you write material, obviously, okay, you're writing the material, and I'm sure it's a lot of work. I know it is, and but then you have to be spontaneous and go up there and make believe that you're coming up with these right and left with timing. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, that's called talent. It's, as Pat Cooper would say, it's called talent. Talent. I mean, that's the same as an actor, though. You go see, you know, let's take the exact opposite of stand-up comedy. You know, you go see Death of a Salesman, and whoever's playing Willie Loman, you're believing that he's having these thoughts, these reactions, and these words in that moment at that time. You're not believing that he's an actor who's carefully written and rehearsed Arthur Miller's writing. It's quite the same with stand-up. And you have your act, and your act is written, and your act is rehearsed, and your act is perfected over, you know, and you'll discover things about jokes you've written 10 years later. You know, I've got jokes I've been telling for, 10, 20 years, and I'm just now figuring out things about them. I can't remember what the bit was, but recently I had one joke that or routine I've been doing for decades. And then it just suddenly hit me, go, wait a minute. I don't need these 3 extra words in there. I can take those out. And that just hit me recently, so that'll happen. But then simultaneously you're on stage, and yes, you're having a conversation with the audience. So that is, that's part of the craft, I guess, is you, but you also feel it. I mean, sometimes you'll have a show that is not up to your standards, or maybe for whatever reason you feel like you kind of went into automatic pilot or whatever. But for the most part, because you're thrust out on that stage as if Adam Sandler was shoving you out there, you're thrust out. There's the audience, and it's very immediate. And in that moment, you got to communicate with these people. And what you have, the tools you have to communicate is your act, but you have to take that and turn that into an immediate, spontaneous conversation. Well, hopefully a monologue. Hopefully they're not talking too much back to you too much.
Right.
It can be quite irritating. People who go to comedy shows, just shut up and let the guy do his act, okay? Because that's what you're there for. It's not about you. All right.
Have you? But it is. But it's not. Have you had hecklers?
Oh, well, you don't, the classic cliche of you suck, get off the stage, doesn't really happen. I mean, imagine it does, but it doesn't really happen. What you get there's usually alcohol involved.
Of course.
That's the key element. And you get people who think they're helping. Like they want to help you because they like you and they're enjoying the experience, and they want everyone else to know that they're enjoying the experience, and they think they're contributing to the act by talking to you while you're on stage, and you got to deal with that. And then if there's too much alcohol involved, well, then it can become a bachelorette party, which you don't want to get booked to do a bachelorette party. So yeah, you get that. Okay. You get that in comedy clubs a lot. You don't get that in theaters. Luckily, I'm performing quite a lot in theaters. So in theaters, people behave themselves, or they're one of 900 people. But in a comedy club where it's more intimate, then they can, and you want a little bit of that. It's not bad for the audience to get involved in your act. It shows that they're loving what you're doing, and they want to be part of it in a sense, or they want to connect with you. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And of course, you can then mine that for more laughs, And again, oftentimes it's not really about the clever things you come up with in your head to say in those moments. If you come up with something clever and you say it and it gets a big laugh, well, that's great. And that happens. But what also happens is if someone's talking to you and you just say something honest, but in the moment, not terribly insulting, but you're like, why am I even talking to you? And then you walk away. The rest of the audience, so that spontaneity can contribute to the experience. That's the thing about stand-up. It's very immediate, as opposed to like a singer. If a singer's up there on stage and they're singing, tall and tan and young and lovely and short and fat and off, whatever the hell the lyrics. The audience is going to sit there for 3 minutes, and we're going to listen to this guy sing "Girl from Ipanema," and I guess if you're encouraged to, and it's some dopey, I don't know, tribute to, I don't know, Journey or something, and so that people go, "Can't stop the feeling," or whatever the hell Journey's big hit song is. Maybe they'll sing along. But for the most part, like a singer, you're watching the singer, you're enjoying the music. You don't necessarily feel compelled to jump up on stage with that person and contribute. But with comedy, people, if they like you, they want to get involved with you, which again can also be irritating.
Yeah, I would imagine. So you have done cruises. Is this true? I'm touring now on cruise. I perform quite a lot on luxury cruise lines. It's a great racket. It's a great business, and I'm out there performing on these beautiful ships and these fantastic theaters. They all have like Broadway style, Broadway level houses. 900-seat theaters, state of the art, lights. It's really a joy to do your act in that setting. And then if you're doing your act in the lounge on a ship, well, the lounge is a gorgeous lounge. It's a 300-seat lounge. It's beautiful. So it's a lot of fun doing your act on these ships, and it pays pretty decently. You know what I'm saying? It pays pretty decent.
I don't know who I owe money to might be watching this. So
okay,
but it pays pretty.
I've never been on a cruise ship, I must confess, and when people tell me that, what you tell me, it's like Wow. It's like a city. It's like just yeah.
Yeah, it's a big hotel in the middle of the ocean. So if that
Better
doesn't
city.
appeal to but but as a performer, as a stand-up, like if this were the 1970s,
Uh-huh.
I would be touring as an opening act for Tom Jones or Engelbert Humperdinck, and I knew all the guys who did those things back in the 70s and into the 80s. That was a big circuit. But that's all gone. That doesn't exist anymore. And if this were the 80s, I would be schlepping across the country back and forth, headlining at the chains of comedy clubs that popped up in the 1980s during the comedy boom. Or I'd be touring the Playboy 70s and 80s. There was the Playboy Club circuit where Playboy, had clubs in every major city in America. And comics would sign up and they get a 20-week contract and they tour around. But it's the 2000 whatevers, and so the cruise ships is the new. That is the cruise ships used to have a bad connotation to it back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was like thought of as like a cheesy thing, but now it's like I'm telling you, it's a great place to perform. It's a great way to do your act. So I'm loving it. Yeah.
Good. No, I'm glad. Who is?
Yeah.
If you have one, who's your favorite comedian? Someone you look up to?
I like you. I think you're pretty funny. Your hat in particular is hysterical. I don't have a favorite comedian. I do not have a favorite. I like me. I like my act. I like anyone who's got an act that works. I have a lot of respect for that. So I'm an easy audience. I'm an easy audience for comedy. If you've got an act that works, I know how hard that is to put together. So I start from that level and I move up. I don't know. You name some comics, I'll tell you what I think of them. How about that?
Steve Wright.
I love Steve Wright. Here's the thing about Steve Wright. I did the last, Louis C.K.'s show, Louie, that was on.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So I think it was 5 seasons. And the first 4 seasons, whenever you saw Louie doing his stand-up, he was performing at the Comedy Cellar downtown on McDougal Street. For some reason, I don't know why, season 5, he moved to the Comic Strip, the club that I did stand-up the very first time. And he cast me as the owner of the club. And so I was in an episode where I'm the owner of the Comic Strip, and we had a very funny negotiation scene where I'm trying to convince him to do something he doesn't want to do. And it was a funny scene. When we shot that episode, Stephen Wright was a consulting producer on that season. I think he was in to tweak jokes, essentially. And so we're shooting at the Comic Strip. I'm spending the day there. And Louis is very, he wrote the show, he produced the show, he directed the show, he's very involved or was very involved in every aspect. So the man's concentrating quite a lot on the set. He's a busy guy. But Stephen was just hanging around, and I was hanging around because, when I was needed, I was needed. When I wasn't needed, I was just on the set. And the set was the Comic Strip. And Stephen hadn't set foot in the Comic Strip in 35 years. So we bonded, me and him, immediately because he had referenced, we're standing around, me, him, and Louis C.K., and I can't remember the context, but Stephen references, like the last time, that last footage of Hitler. And I said, oh, yeah, when he comes up from the bunker and he's patting the little boy on the face. And he goes, oh, because we bonded on the fact that we both knew this piece of footage of Hitler's last footage. So he liked that a lot. So then we became friends on the set. And I was showing him around. I said, Stephen, there's your caricature, because they have caricatures up. And he hadn't seen it in 35 years. He was delighted. Very nice guy, very sweet guy, very funny guy, and, of course, a brilliant genius comedy writer. And every once in a while, I'll write a joke that doesn't really fit in my act because it's a Stephen Wright joke. I wrote a joke. I mean, it's not a Stephen Wright. It's a joke that would work in his act more so than in mine. I wrote a joke. I hired a publicist to get my name in the papers. The publicist says, in order to get your name in the papers, you got to do something huge and outrageous. So I shot him. But nobody knows I did it because now I don't have a publicist. It's the perfect crime. Now, that's a great joke, I think, but that's a Stephen Wright joke. So if you got his email address, shoot it my way because I want to try and sell him that joke. But he's a nice guy. So then what happened was, we finished shooting this business I did with Louis C.K., And Louie said, and this is not instance, this was like, you hear this in show business, but from him, it sounded very sincere. He said, Dave, that was great. We're going to have you back. This is going to be a recurring thing. We're going to do more business with me as the owner of the comedy club that he performed at. And I said, Louie, that's great. I'm available. And then basically the next day I opened the newspaper and go, oh my God, there goes my recurring role, which was my sole reaction to the scandal, was I got screwed out of a recurring role. So there you go.
Wow. So it's that's part of the challenge of the business that we love. You're constantly have to be on top of things with a smile.
Well, I think that's what brought the whole thing to an end in his case, but nonetheless.
Right.
Nonetheless.
What do you think? What do you think about? What do you think about the greats? I'll just say like George Burns and
I love George Burns. I love Burns. If you want to know like the history of show business in America in the 20th century, read all of George Burns's books. Guy wrote or ghost wrote or narrated a half a dozen wonderful books on that are just the history of vaudeville, and it's his career. So it just touched on everything in radio and then film and television, etc. Burns was hilarious. And, I get all my media, as everyone does now, from watching 20-second reels on Instagram. And there's a great clip of Burns on the Carson show. And, it was a bit from his act, but they just performed it so beautifully. Burns is sitting there, he's smoking a cigar. Carson says, how many cigars do you smoke, George? He says, I smoke 15 to 20 cigars a day. And Carson says, 15 to 20 cigars? What is your doctor? He says, my doctor's dead. So that was the timing was perfect because it's Carson and Burns, and Carson doesn't even get the full sentence. What is your doctor? My doctor's dead. So Burns is great. I love Burns.
Excellent.
And you go watch George Burns and Gracie Allen and Fred Astaire in the movie they were in. What the hell? It was a P.G. Wodehouse story. Oh, I forgot the name of it. But anyway, it's delightful, and they do a wonderful dance number, the three of them, in a fun house with the mirrors and the slides and everything. It's fantastic.
I think I remember that, but I can't think of the name.
I can't come up with the name either.
No.
But it's easy to look up. Go Google his friend. So yeah. So that's my take on George Burns.
No, I love it. How long does it take?
Yeah.
And this is a loaded question. Okay. How long does it take for you to write material? Try and pick that apart.
Yeah, that's a tough one because sometimes, the creative process, if you will. I don't know. Jokes come. It's odd because like sometimes jokes will come to you fully formed, and they'll just pop in your head, and sometimes it's just an idea of a premise you think is funny, and you got to find the joke, and it takes forever. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it that I can think of, but you get better at it. It becomes easier because after you've written a lot of jokes over a long period of time, you sort of start getting in the rhythm of seeing how to do that, how to take something funny or seeing something and going, that's funny. That's funny. I can do something with that. I can make that into, it's not that hard. Certain joke structures become easier and easier and easier. I saw a bumper sticker on a car once, and it was a vegetarian bumper. And it said, meat makes me sick. So that was the bumper sticker. So it's very easy to go from there. I'm analyzing one of my own jokes, which makes it, there's nothing funnier than a comedian pulling apart a joke and analyzing it. That's a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so you see like a bumper sticker says meat making me sick, and it's very easy to go from there to like, what's next? What's the next, thing like that. So meat makes me, why would you put on your car, meat makes me, I'm going to get a bumper sticker on my car says wheat gives me a rash. I'm going to get a bumper sticker on my car says if I so much as get in the same room with a plum, I develop a urinary tract infection. So those yeah, anytime you can end a joke with urinary tract infection, that's gold. So, those kind of jokes become easier to write, and then, etc. Ellipses.
No, I love that. Sometimes if you try to write, you you can't try to be funny, because if you try, it doesn't come out natural. It's where do you get your best moments of funny?
Where do where do I get my best moments of funny?
Yeah, I mean, odd things like when you're driving and you can't write it down, or you're sitting on a bus, or you have your hands full doing something and something comes to you.
No, you write it down. You just write it down. I mean, or you pull out your phone and record it. See, this is so, to me, sometimes there's nothing that'll turn you off from comedy more than having someone discuss the craft of it. But there is craft involved. You think of something funny, or you think of something that could be funny. You write it down, or you pull out your phone and record a voice memo, and then you got to sit down and try and write something, and then you gotta work it up, and that becomes easier too with time. Like when you first start out doing comedy, you got to tell a joke 30 times easily before you can get a handle on it. So like a joke could not work 29 times, but then the 30th time something clicks in, you go, oh, that's a joke. And that number becomes smaller and smaller the older you get, the more decrepit you are. So now I can write a joke, and if it doesn't work 3 times, I know this joke's not going to work. Forget it, move on, do something different. Or I find a way to make it work on the 4th time, but that's about it. I don't need much more than that anymore. Or either that, or I've just become lazy and I don't want to put in more effort than that anymore.
Dave, you have unveiled the mystery.
Yes, it's true. Doug Henning action there. That's
I know Doug Henning. I remember him. I saw him once. And yeah. So I have a question for you.
Well, that's appropriate because you're the show. So
where you rub off on me. It's very funny.
Well, that's another reason why Louie got canceled. But that's beside the point. Come on, grow up, for God's sakes. Enough with that. Okay, it's been years. All right, let's go.
That
was my recurring role. All right, go ahead.
That was a good impression. That was really good. Of Louie.
No, I wasn't doing it. I was doing me. I was doing me, saying that was my recurring role, and then the show got canceled. It would have ran for years. Anyway, go ahead.
Dave Konig, where can people find you?
They can find out. So I hired a market research focus group team. It cost me literally tens of thousands of dollars, and they worked over a period of like 18 months to come up with the name for my website. And what they came up with is davekonig.com. So if you go to Dave Konig, K-O-N like Nancy, I-G like George.com, I don't even know. And it's possible you might not even have to put the www in there anymore.
No, maybe
you don't have to do it. So like a whole new world. It's great.
Yeah.
But go to my website, davekonig.com. There's TV clips, there's stand-up clips. You can download my stand-up comedy special, which is on that, and you can download my audio CD stuff and all kinds of great stuff. Also, I'm an artist. I'm an oil painter, and I have all my paintings up on my website. I sell my paintings and prints. And so here I'm going to grab one. This is Aaron. Even though I'm a Mets fan, I don't know if you can you see that?
That's very cool. I can see it. Yeah.
That's Aaron Judge. I'm an oil painter. So there you go. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
got to ask you, because painting is when do you find time to do that?
Well, no, that's actually you kind of gave yourself a little shy, but that's a great question, because here's the answer. The answer is I've always been an artist my whole life, drawing, cartooning a little bit, stuff like. And when I was young, very young, when all the other starving actors were waiting on tables, I would work in little ad agencies in the art department. So I've always had artistic skill. And in the back of my head, I always thought, I want to try oil painting. At some point, to be a real artist, you gotta slap paint on a canvas. But I never did it, and I never had the time until the worldwide global pandemic. And then I was out of work and out of luck for, like everybody else, for at least a year, and stuck in my apartment, et cetera. And I finally had the time to try painting. So I started painting. And here's the thing about art and creativity and dare I say talent is it's got to come out somehow, you know. And if it's got to come out, and you got to produce something, or at least I feel compelled to. So because I couldn't perform stand up and I couldn't do TV and I couldn't act, I couldn't do anything. It all came out in painting. I started painting and I got obsessed with it, and I knocked out like 30 paintings in the space of the shutdown. And then I found a gallery out in Connecticut, the RPAC Gallery in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and they started selling my work, and they sell prints and they sell the originals, and I started selling work. I got obsessed with, for a while, I got obsessed with Muhammad Ali. I don't know, can you see this? I don't know if you can see. This is a big painting, too. I'll see if I can get it out. I got into a big Muhammad Ali kick for a while. Can you see that?
That's amazing.
That's Ali taking the title for the first time from Liston, and you know. So this is what I do. So, but now, because I'm performing all the time on the ships, I have zero time to paint, and I have zero space to paint. So the painting's on hold for the time being, but I'll get back to it. You know, God willing, if I live long enough, if my health holds out.
You're fantastic. That's too funny. That's an amazing painting that you just showed me with Muhammad Ali. There's so much energy in there, you know?
Yeah. I found Ali very inspiring during the pandemic. Because it was such a depressing time, obviously. And, you know, guys like that who just, you know, take what life throws at them and then not only survive it, but then exceed and excel on such a high level is very inspiring. So,
excellent.
You know. So that's that story.
Oh, I got to ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
I just noticed that painting right behind us with the stairs. What is that? That's great.
Oh, thank you, sir. Let's see if I can. Walking on the stairs.
That's fantastic. I love the shadows and everything. It's like you can walk right into it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Who is that?
It's just a guy, just an old man in the neighborhood. And I was walking behind him, and you know, it's kind of like we were talking about, like finding comedy. You know, you just see something. Like I saw this guy, and I just said, "Oh my God, that's a painting." You know, and I snapped a picture of him, and I said, "That's it. That's a painting right there." So
you immortalized him.
I did. He'll never know.
He doesn't even know it.
No, he's probably dead by now anyway.
David,
yes, sir.
Excuse me, Dave Konig. Yes. I want to thank you for being on Real Actors, Real Answers.
Thank you, sir.
In fascinating stories, and make sure everyone you visit his website, davekonig.com. He's a funny man. I have my opinion, and that's what I think. I think that you're very funny, and I love your energy and everything else.
I appreciate that. I smoke a lot of meth, and so right before the show, I just got all methed out, and here we are.
You're too funny.
Okay.
Can you be too funny?
I don't think cigars, though. I don't smoke meth.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir. It's been a privilege and an honor. Stay with me, and you watch this video interview with Dave Konig and look him up. He's fantastic.
Actually, Konig, but it's close enough.
Konig.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David. My pleasure.